Alright, boys and girls. So I got something I want to try today. Well, a couple things I want to try today, but this Gilomen clutching the Black Max kit. I just want to mess around with the weights a little bit and see if I can get my, my cruising RPM down just a little bit, and just see what all the different things do. So in the instructions, this has been the same way for a while, but so in the instructions I have a red spring in the primary, yellow spring in the secondary, and 3 weights in the first hole, 1 in the second hole, and 1 in the third hole. Position 1, the more weight you add in position 1 will lower the engagement, versus less weight in position 1 will raise the engagement. But this does affect the overall RPM. So I kind of want to see how that affects it. I think it's pretty good as far as takeoff now, but I would like to lower that engagement or lower the RPM at cruising. Just seems like a little more than I need for every day. It works good on the trails because the response is right there, but I want to see if I can just fine tune that just a little bit. Position 2, the more weight you add in position 2 will lug the engine harder right at takeoff versus less weight, less RPM, so it'll come up quicker at takeoff. I think that's good. I want mine to be able to, when you stab it, go. And then position 3, the more weight you add in position 3 will lower the operating RPM above 10 miles an hour. That's kind of what I'm looking for. Less weight raises the operating RPM above 10 miles an hour. So what I'm looking to do is above 10 miles an hour. Like I said, we can drive on the roads here. So I find myself fairly often just cruising semi-long distances at like 30, 40 miles an hour. At 30, 40, 50 miles an hour, at 45, I'm like 6,100. If I could bring that down 500 or maybe even 1,000 would be even better. Back to more like it was in the factory in that regard, and still keep the performance and everything else. That's what I'm going to try for here. So, like I said, 45 miles an hour, 6,100 RPM. So I'm going to change up the weights a little bit and see if I can't get that down a little bit and keep the rest of the performance. So we're going to take it down, add some weight, and see where it goes. Okay, so just for a variable, here's my engagement RPM. Sitting here idling, 12, 1250, 13. I don't know, it jumps around quite a bit actually. I mean, the thing is running smooth. On the actual dash tach, you can't see it. I mean, it doesn't move at all, but. So we're gonna say between 12 and 13 is where it idles at. So I'm just gonna slowly press into it until we get engagement. So I'm gonna say 1750. Do it a couple times to try and get a good average. Yeah, so 1750 is where it really starts to move. Hard to tell, but when you're just really smoothly giving it gas, definitely nothing at 16, 17, 1750, you can feel it kind of start just slightly moving. 18, 1850, you're actually backing up a little. I would assume forward is the same difference, more or less. So same RPMs at idle. Start trying to move ahead. Yeah, so 1800 RPMs, you're starting to actually move. You can feel movement in the whole general. Do it a couple more times here. 1700, 1750, we start bouncing ahead. Okay guys, so we just switched to the green spring in the primary from the red, and I went from 311 in the weights to 422. So we're gonna see what difference that makes. First thing we're gonna do here is, like I said, idles 12 to 1300-ish. Before it was taking off, somewhere around 17, 1750, maybe 18 at the highest when it was actually moving. So let's see what that difference is. So there's light pedal. Okay, so maybe 21 50, 21. Put it in reverse. And it's still smooth, it just takes a little longer to get there. So I'm gonna go right around a little bit and see what kind of difference it makes actually driving, RPMs wise and such. So at the point that I smoothed out, we saved probably 200 to 300 RPMs. You can definitely tell a difference in the cab. So before it was like 9,050 or 9,100, basically all in RPM. Now we're like 85, 8550. But it seems to me that it gets to that 80, 82 miles an hour faster. So maybe before we were just turning too many RPMs with the bigger tires. So far I'm pretty happy with it. It takes off a little bit harder. I think the mid-range is maybe a little softer, but then the top end is a little higher without turning quite as many RPMs. If I remember correctly, top end RPM on this bone stock was like 81, 8,200. So now with the kit, with the Block Max kit, with the red string 311 weights, I was like 9,050, 9,100 RPM, and run pretty much about the same speed, 81, 82. I don't think it got there quite as quick as it does now, so I switched to the green spring, which is a more aggressive, more RPM before it takes off. Before it was like 17, 1,800 RPM, now it's like 2,100 RPMs before it really starts to engage. I don't think it's jerky. Seems pretty smooth to me. It's not as smooth as far as, obviously you have more RPM, it's gonna lurch a little quicker, but I'm okay with that. Okay, so here's a dead stop takeoff, high range. Just gentle on it. Still pretty smooth. My belt is actually a little bit hourglass at this point. It's one of the reasons why I wanted to check a few things out, change it up a little bit, just see what I can do differently. I still like that completely smooth takeoff, but also I want to be able to smash on it in high range and not worry about hourglass in the belt. So I went green spring, 4, 2, and 2 weights. So I took almost 300 to 400 RPM off of my cruising speed. So I'll get up to 45 here, show you that. I was exactly at 6,100 at 45 before. So on a flat road, it's not smooth, but real smooth in here. So at 45, now we're more in that 5,700 range, just cruising. So 300 to 400 plus RPM lower, dead stop, I won't run at top speed, but from a dead stop, definitely comes off the line harder. Like I said, the mid-range seems just a little bit smoother, softer maybe. Hard to tell. I'll have to put it up against one of the other Razors or R-Max or something just to see what kind of difference it makes. But yeah, it definitely comes alive quicker, which is what I was looking for.